I have to say that from our perspective, from the House Democratic Caucus perspective, it was one of the strangest opening weeks of a legislative session that I have seen in my 9 years at the Capitol. To start out with what really was a tepidly received State of the State address from the governor, tepidly received not just from the House Democratic side of things, but also from the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans. There was not a lot of enthusiasm demonstrated on opening day of session for the governor's comments. To go from that to Rose Day that was accompanied by an anthrax scare and a Satanist walking around the halls, to say it was a unique beginning is an understatement. But nevertheless, we're glad to be back. The team's glad to be back to try to move the state forward, to carry an agenda that we believe will move the state forward. We said after the State of the State that we're willing to work hand in hand with the governor, but we saw some real glaring holes in the governor's budget and in the governor's opening comments for the legislative session. Maybe that's why it was so tepidly received. After all, we stated that the governor was right on the problems, just wrong on the solutions. She has correctly identified the problems, we think, for the first time in her 4 years as governor. For the first 4 years, she tried to divert everybody's attention onto federal issues and onto social issues that, at the end of the day, didn't move public education, public health, or public safety forward one bit. And while she was doing that, she oversaw budget cut after budget cut to those core functions of government. Now she's come to our side of the issue, and she realizes that education, healthcare, and public safety should be a priority this session going forward, and we're going to work with her to do that. However, what we've failed to see in her budget, in her executive budget, or in her comments at the State of the State was any real plan to make that happen. What you saw in terms of education funding was an attempt to unconstitutionally raid revolving funds like she did last year, to simply throw a measly $25 million towards public education. And while the average voter might think, well, $25 million is a lot of money, when you consider the fact that common education is underfunded by nearly $200 million in the last 5 years, you realize that $25 million is a far cry from what's really needed just to bring our public schools back to where they were before the economic recession. And so it's concerning for us to see that the governor is considering maybe is considering touching those revolving funds and risking a constitutional challenge. And even if she does that, she still only believes in her budget that we can put another $25 million into public ed, which won't even keep up with inflation, won't even keep up with healthcare costs, and won't even keep up with the increased student population. So that ought to be a real concern for our parents and teachers and administrators throughout the state. Secondly, she continues to say that her plan for healthcare is to just wag her finger at folks and tell them to eat better and quit smoking, when our plan for healthcare is to bring our federal dollars home, to ensure that our 1 out of every 5 citizens can actually have health insurance, to ensure that our rural hospitals are solvent and can continue to offer health care not just to the poor in our communities, but to the middle class families that rely so heavily on those rural hospitals. And then finally, public safety. The governors, we're with the governor on the need to improve public safety, but her plan to continue to study the issue and kick the can down the road, we believe won't truly solve the problem. We have a staffing crisis. We have an incarceration crisis. We need to really have serious solutions for it. Our caucus supports the Justice Reinvestment Initiative that she originally supported, then didn't support, now says she supports again. The flip-flopping is making it difficult for us to figure out which direction she wants us to go on the issue. But at the end of the day, if she wants to implement JRI, we'll do it. But we think it needs to be implemented now, not 2 years from now. And so, as I stated, she's right on the problems, she's wrong on the solutions, and we're hoping that as the weeks unfold moving forward in this legislative session, that she will find real answers to the funding critical functions of government, and she'll do it in a way that doesn't divide us, but brings us all together in a way that moves the state forward. I know my members have spoken with other members of the Republican caucus privately. They understand the need to bring our federal dollars home to make sure that our rural hospitals remain solvent. They get it. But they also understand the politics of it, that it could be difficult for them. Well, the way you create the political will to accomplish something like that is you have a strong executive leader who steps up and says that I have the best interests of the state in mind, the best interests of our hospitals, our middle-class families in mind, and politics be what they are, I don't care. We're going to focus on good public policy. If the governor would step up and make that statement and make the case, go corner to corner, go to all 77 counties and make the case for bringing our federal dollars home to ensure our hospitals are solvent and to ensure our citizens have health insurance, I think she can help to create the political will. After all, she served 3 terms as lieutenant governor, 2 terms as a United States congressman. She served now in her 2nd term as governor. The people of Oklahoma know who she is, and they trust her to a certain extent to lead, or else they wouldn't put her in this position. If we're ever going to get anything done of substance on this critical issue, it's going to take true leadership out of the second floor, and right now it's not there. At the end of the day, other governors around the state, other governors around the country, Republican governors in Indiana and Ohio and New Mexico now, and then Alaska, Montana, Utah, all these Republican governors around the country, now that they're through their re-elections, are saying, you know what, it just makes too much sense to not bring our federal tax dollars home to take care of our citizens. They see the need. They see the fact that we could basically get, for every $1 we send to the federal government for this Medicaid money, or for the bring their federal dollars home, we'd get $10 back in essence. It makes too much economic sense for the state, and it's going to take real leadership to do it. Our caucus is pushing for it because while we understand that the politics of it may not be the best, public policy is why we're sent here, to do good things for our citizens. We believe at the end of the day it makes too much sense not to do it. We just need her to lead.
Would the politics of it get any easier after the Supreme Court weighs in on it here in the next couple months?
I think so. Maybe. I mean, I can't get into the governor's mind and find out what calculations she's making, but she certainly might be thinking to herself, well, let's wait and see if it can survive one more final judicial challenge at the Supreme Court. My hope is that after the Supreme Court deals with the issue and realizes that taking a clerical error in the ACA and throwing it all out for that purpose was not the real legislative intent behind the bill, that we can hopefully move forward with the ACA and bring those federal dollars home. I hope that's the case, but I don't know. The way I handicap things, and part of my job as minority leader is to try to strategize and try to understand where people are going to move so that we can try to move with them or move ahead of them, something like that. In this perspective, I look at it and think, well, this is the best year, in my opinion, to accomplish this critical need. Next year is another election year, which is going to make it tough on House Republicans. The following year, she's now in her last 2-year term, and you'll already hear rumblings as to who's trying to replace her for governor, and it's going to make it tougher for her to have the executive leadership and the authority that she needs to push through something critical like this. And so from our perspective, from the hospital's perspective, there's no time like the present. She needs to get this done this year, but unfortunately she's apparently choosing to take the path of least resistance towards politics and not good public policy. We continue to be baffled by Republican leaders who look at an underfunded public school system and instead of offering real solutions towards legitimate funding for those schools, instead offer solutions to pull more dollars away from our public school children. That's essentially what Jolly and Nelson are doing. They're saying that their solution to what ails the public school system is to allow a few kids to get up and out and take money away from an already underfunded public school system. That is not the solution. If Senator Jolly and Representative Nelson want to really attack the solution, we've got the plan. The plan is you properly fund public education. That's what we House Democrats believe. And then the second part of that plan is you actually attack poverty in Oklahoma. But what you have seen under this administration and the Republican leadership is a concerted effort to continue to cut budgets for public education, as well as making it tougher and tougher for folks to get up and out of poverty as they simply wage war, not war on poverty, but war on poor people from our perspective, not giving them the ability to get up and out of their situation. And if we're going to continue to not address poverty, then you're going to continue to have problems in the public schools. And voucher systems that take money away from public schools will never solve the problem that really ails our public school system. As a matter of fact, I've been making the case to the business community that for the last number of years, that because of the fiscal irresponsibility of this governor and the Republican leadership in the House and Senate, eventually the business community would help to bear some of the real pain and the burden of their fiscal irresponsibility. And I said they would do that either through increased taxes, which now the discussion is rolling back tax credits that may actually be beneficial and create jobs in the state, and so doing it actually increase taxes on the business community. So that would either be one side of it, or the second side would be because of their fiscal irresponsibility, their lack of ability to properly fund education, healthcare, and public safety, moving forward, if there was an opportunity to really bring jobs into one of our counties to that in order to compete with surrounding states, we'd need a legitimate tax credit to bring those folks in. It would be much more difficult to accomplish that, to get one of those tax credits passed. And so the business community in the state of Oklahoma will be suffering. They're already going to suffer from it, but they're going to suffer even more because of their fiscal irresponsibility. From our perspective, and I've said it before, that my ideal situation is sort of I sort of adhere to the Tom Coburn school of tax credits. I would love to live in a country that said we're not going to play the game of picking winners and losers in the business community, that we would all as a nation say, let's stop playing the tax credit game and let each state put on the best public schools, the best roads and bridges, the best healthcare system, or whatever they could do to entice them to come in that way. I realize, my team realizes that that's never going to happen. We're not going to unilaterally disarm and lay all of our tax credits down. And so from our perspective, we want to use good, smart tax credits that create jobs, that bring in good, high-paying, middle-class jobs in the state of Oklahoma. And if that means getting rid of tax credits that don't do that to help make sure we have those credits that do, then we're for that. But we don't want to get in a situation where, because of their personal income tax cuts, because of their corporate income tax cuts, that we can't fund education such that we have to turn around and rob potential job-creating growth just to maintain some sort of basic level of education funding. That's where we are now, and that shouldn't happen.